Drops per minute. As nurses and midwives in health facilities, we are saddled with the responsibility of calculating drops per minute for IV fluids that would need to be administered. And yes, in today's society, we have gadgets and technologies that can help us to do these calculations, but that is not the case in every facility you would find yourself to work in. And if you are to find yourself in one of these facilities where you don't have these technological gadgets to do this calculation for you, you would have to do it manually. So drops per minute. Now, drops per minute, the formula is total volume in mils all over time in hours times drop factor all over 60. That is the formula. Total volume in mils all over time in hours times drop factor all over 60. Now, I want to explain the word drop factor first of all. We have the micro drop factors and the macro drop factors. Now, the macro drip sets with a bigger drop, it could have 10, 15 and 20 drops per minute per mil, while the micro drip set administers smaller drops and the drop factor is 60 drops per mil. Now, what does this drop factor mean? Now, the drop factor means the amount of mils that will amount of drops that will make a mil of any fluid. The amount of drops that will make a mil of any fluid. In other words, it means that the 10 drop factor, 10 drops of any fluid will make 1 mil. 15 drops of any liquid will make 1 mil, and 20 drops of any liquid will make 1 mil. That's what this drop factor mean. And then the micro drip sets of 60 drops per mil, which is the drop factor of 60. 60 drops of liquid will make 1 mil. Usually the micro is used for pediatrics. So now let's go over to the calculation that we are here for. Drops per minute. Drops per minute. As I said earlier, the total volume of in mils all over time times drop factor all over 60. That is the formula for calculating drops per minute. Now, I want you to also understand that you can also calculate it differently if you want, and that can be done by, first of all, converting the time in hours to minutes. And if you have done that conversion, you don't need this particular formula that I've given to you. What you need is total volume in mils all over time in minutes times the drop factor. Total volume in mils all over time in minutes times drop factor. So now let's have some example. Let's say we are calculating with a drop factor of 20. A drop factor of 20. 500 mils of an IV fluid has been prescribed to run over 8 hours, and we have a drop factor of 20. So the formula, as earlier stated, is fluid in mils all over time required for this fluid to be administered times the drop factor all over 60. 60 is a constant for time. So if we're to translate this formula into reality, is 500 mils of IV fluid all over 8 hours times 20, which is the drop factor all over 60. Now, if we were to times the numerator, it will be 500 times 20, which is the drop factor, and that will give us 10,000. And then the denominator, 8 times 60 will give us 480, which will equate, and then if we divide the 10 1000 all over 480, it will now give us 20.83 drops per minute. In approximation, that will be 21 drops per minute. Now, the second formula which I gave you is that you'd have to convert the 8 hours into minutes. The 8 hours into minutes. And then the conversion will be 8 times 60. 8 times 60, which will give us 480 minutes. 480 minutes. Now, if we have gotten the minutes, then the division, the calculation of drops per minute will now be 500 mils divided by 480 minutes times the drop factor, which is 20, and that will give us the same result, 20.83, in approximation 21 drops per minute. That is how we will that is how to calculate drops per minute.